Cool. Uh, thanks everyone for joining. Welcome to the October edition of the Radius Community Call. I'm Reshma. I'm a product manager with the Radius team. I'll be hosting today's community call. So let's get right into it. Welcome everyone. So this call is definitely for you. We are here to share what's happening with Radius. If you have questions, ask in the chat. A lot of Radius members are there to answer your question. And if you have questions during the call, raise your hand. We'll unmute your mic. And if you're watching the recording and if you have a question, reach out to us in Discord. We are pretty active there. So today's agenda covers some updates that has happened in the past two releases, and then what's under development, and then our participation at some of the community events like KubeCon Atlanta. So let's get right into the new features. So I'm going to hand it over to Zach to do a quick demo on the updates that he has done to the Radius dashboard.
Okay. Thank you, Reshma. Let me share my screen. All right. So we don't often talk about the Radius dashboard. It's sort of, we are always talking about Bicep and showing you VS Code and showing you the RAD CLI. But I think the dashboard is actually really helpful, particularly to new users to understand concepts of Radius. And we recently enhanced it. In the past on this call, we've talked a lot about resource types. I think at one point I showed you rad resource type show, the CLI command, and it shows you, all the properties and things, but it's not really great. It's kind of like reading a man page. So we enhanced the dashboard with resource types, and I think it came out really nice. Some of this stuff is mocked up. I'll highlight kind of the mocked up things, but I'm trying to show you what I imagine a well-rounded, mature Radius installation and deployment and configuration would look like. So under the resource types here, we have all the resource types that would be available to a developer. And, they're organized, by namespace. If you've been paying attention, we're working on extensibility for the core resource types like containers and secrets. And these all of these new extensible resource types are part of this radius.compute or radius.data namespace. And that just means by extensibility, I just mean you can have a recipe for a container, whereas in the past you couldn't. So this is an ongoing project. We're going to talk more about it quite a bit in the, because we're getting to the point where we can start to demo these things. But let's just dig into the containers resource type, and imagine though that you're a developer inside of an enterprise organization or any organization, and what you first see is the developer documentation. And so this is documentation that the platform engineer has written with examples. Maybe it has who to contact for help within the organization, maybe an email address. But here I'm showing examples of how to use the containers resource. Here's just, a straight up, here's an example just as a simple one, with a container and a demo and an image called demo. Here, there's more about exposing ports, more about setting up volumes, the normal examples that you would expect of developer documentation. And these are specific, this is all database driven. So this is actually stored in the Radius control plane as part of the definition for the container resource type. If I click over to properties, you see that we have a couple of two different API versions. I can click down to see the older one, or just focus on the new one here. And we get all the properties. And if we click into containers, this is going to start to look really familiar if you're seeing a pod spec like name, args, all the sort of image, all the typical container stuff. I like it because it's quite interactive, and we can just go and, and it has all the descriptions. because as we're working on this new extensibility project and defining these new resource types, we've paid really close attention to make sure we have good developer documentation. So that's just kind of interacting and with the resource type definition. The next, these are properties a developer would set. The next tab here is the output property, and on containers there's not any outputs. But let's go look at a different one. Let's go look at MySQL, and again with the developer documentation. And here we see output properties like host, password, and port. But then username, that's kind of funny. Maybe I should look at that one. But so the output properties, these are the properties that the developer would use in order to connect to the database. And actually, if we go back over to the overview, we actually say, hey, here's how to connect to the database by environment variables. And so it tells you that since you've created a connection called MySQL DB, there's actually all of these environment variables. And this MySQL DB that part of the environment variable name actually comes from the connection name. So that's what in this example, it's connection MySQL DB database. It's actually like the connection name itself. So the idea here is that you have now a place to define the developer documentation for your specific organization. And the last tab here is just the details. If you've defined a radius resource type before, looks familiar. This is just the dump in JSON of the resource type definition. So this is just the straight definition. We typically do this in YAML. You'll see our examples are on YAML. This is just in JSON. And so that developer documentation on the overview is just the description field, and it's a markdown. It's just in markdown format. That's how you get the nice, pretty, because this is a Backstage plugin, so you get the nice, pretty, copy and stuff like that, code block formatting. So that's a new resource type in the dashboard. The second enhancement we've done is in environments. And let's go into there. And on the environment page, we had this before, so this isn't brand new, but we've enhanced it a bit. And the first thing we've done is try to show you like the kind. In Radius, we don't have an environment kind. We don't have a property of that type. But what we're doing here is we're looking at, hey, have you configured Azure or AWS, or is this just Kubernetes, right? In this case, I've mocked up a number of different data centers here. Okay, so imagine you're like an automotive manufacturing, a car company, and I have a couple of different data centers for my manufacturing. Here's my resource groups. I've set up a couple of different resource groups for my business. We don't often talk about resource groups, but if you ever use Azure, you understand that resource groups is kind of a permission boundary within a subscription. It's the same for Radius. This is a resource group that is a permissions boundary. We haven't built RBAC, but when we do, we'll have role permissions and assignments based on the resource group. So I've just mocked up a couple of different ones for my prototypical car company. So accounting, manufacturing, sales, supply chain. Manufacturing, let's say at my assembly plants, I have one here in Detroit. That's my dev environment. Test. I have one in Lansing nearby, but not too far away as my DR site. Prod, et cetera. If I click into any of these, you see the Kubernetes namespace, all the recipes for each one. Later in the call, Nithya is going to show recipe packs that will simplify this whole recipe management. But at least we're surfacing all the details about this environment. So remember, the environment is sort of the intersection of the landing zone, the deployment target, the location. In this case, this Kubernetes namespace. It's the intersection of the deployment target, landing zone, location, whatever you want to call it, and the recipes, right? So these recipes are environment specific. If If I go back to if I go back and go switch to, let's say, the accounting group, accounting, for some reason, I said, hey, they're going to run on Azure. They have different workloads, and so for an Azure environment, you get the subscription and the Azure resource group. That's different than the Radius resource group. This is just the Azure deployment target. And here I'm using Bicep since this is all Azure. Now, in the future, this is kind of a little bit of a cheat because we have these various environments. It's better if I let's go back to the manufacturing. So we have all these different data centers. It's a little bit of a cheat because in Lansing, for example, this DC2, Lansing, this Kubernetes namespace here. Well, that's actually like the Kubernetes cluster. Radius only deploys to its local Kubernetes cluster. On our roadmap, we have the ability to deploy to a remote Kubernetes cluster, and that's what this field here is. So today it's just a hard-coded string that says Radius control plane cluster, meaning the Kubernetes cluster where Radius is installed. But in the future, this would be the Kubernetes API server endpoint URL, right? So you would have these environments where this would be a Kubernetes cluster API endpoint, and then the namespace to deploy to. And if I had an AWS environment, say for sales, it would be that, let's say an EKS cluster API endpoint, the namespace, as well as the AWS account information, the account and the region. So I'm just trying to show here, what a more complex deployment would look like. Once we have this remote Kubernetes cluster deployment, that's on the pretty high up on the list on the roadmap. I think this will get way more interesting because then Radius will be sort of a centralized control plane, and we literally called it, if you've ever used it, we have a UCP component, so it's the universal control plane. And so Radius having the ability to deploy anywhere, any AWS or Azure region, and then any accessible Kubernetes and Kubernetes cluster. And so I think you would end up getting these kind of rich set of environment lists here. And we can always show all, and I've just kind of mocked this stuff up. So that's the demo. Future enhancements coming on the Radius dashboard. I actually did the work to add this resource types in the environment enhancements. And just for FYI, this was really great because Copilot, I use GitHub Copilot to do all of it. It was really great at front end work. This took me maybe 10 hours total to obviously to build it, to add unit tests, because in the dashboard repo we do have a pretty good set of unit tests. So add the unit tests, do the PR, get that reviewed by a couple of folks on the Radius team here. About 10 hours. So it's a really great experience. I think GitHub Copilot was using Sonnet 4.5, the new one. Yeah, so it was really good at front end stuff. Anyways, that's my demo. Back to you, Reshma.
Thanks, Zach. I'll bring back the presentation here. Okay. So yeah, wanted to share some update on the usability side of things. So we've been prioritizing some of the usability issues, both reported from the community and internally as well, over the past couple of releases. One such theme that we've been actively working on is our uninstall or delete story across the board, like dealing with deletion of all Radius entities. So we made some changes to the rad uninstall Kubernetes command in .52 release. So earlier the experience used to be black box, wherein the user doesn't know what would get uninstalled when this command is fired, and then there was no confirmation. So right now the experience is improved here, wherein it lists what all will get uninstalled when this command is fired, and also prompts the user if they want to continue with uninstalling Radius. So this command is basically to uninstall the control plane in the Kubernetes cluster. Uh, and there were some updates to the purge flag as well. So this purge flag wasn't deleting some of the resources. Some resources were left behind. So now it kind of lists all the resources that it will purge. For example, the Kubernetes namespace, API services, and some of the CRDs that Radius created, those were getting left behind. So in the new experience, it lists all the Kubernetes resources that will get deleted, and also prompts the user for confirmation. So these are the updates that went into the the rad uninstall command. The next one is on rad app delete. So when
Hey,
this,
Reshma.
yeah,
Sorry to
go
interrupt.
ahead.
Can we go back just a second? I just want to emphasize something for anybody, particularly watching the recording. Uh,
Go ahead.
so Radius uses the Kubernetes API aggregation layer. So actually, when you're interacting with Kubernetes, you're actually, the Kubernetes API servers proxying those to the Radius control plane, and uninstalling is sort of ambiguous because it could mean a couple of different things. And so the purge flag is a little bit unappreciated. And I just want to make sure that, because since we're talking about it, have the opportunity to explain. So just rad uninstall Kubernetes is going to remove the essentially just the pods. So it's gonna kill the deployment and the services, but it's going to leave all of the information there. So any resources that you had running, your resource types, all that definition, everything is still in etcd. And the purge goes forward and deletes all that information. But the problem beforehand and kind of the change that Reshma is talking about here is all that Kubernetes API aggregation layer configuration was still there. And sometimes you would see folks just do an uninstall and then delete the Radius system namespace. And that doesn't solve it either because this is all Kubernetes API level stuff. So if you're curious, the bug is here, and you can go look. The purge now deletes all of these API resources as well. So it really, fully uninstalls. So just to be clear, uninstall leaves all the information behind, and uninstall purge deletes all of your data as well as removes all the API aggregation layer stuff. So if you want to do a clean uninstall, make sure to do purge. Thanks, Reshma.
Thanks for calling that out. So yeah, and also like if you figure out any gaps, feel free to like raise an issue or like reach us out in Discord. So we are constantly like prioritizing usability related issues. So um, you'd like to like see if there are any gaps or so. So the next story is about rad app delete. So one thing that was happening before was when this command was fired, we weren't like showing the progress of the resources that were getting deleted, and sometimes it gets unresponsive as well. So one of the update that went through in .51 release is showing the progress bar of the resources that are getting deleted. So this is similar to how you would see when an application is getting deployed. So you'll see the progress status for all the different resources that are like deployed. So right now the same experience is available for app deletion as well. And this is something that was contributed by a community member. So thanks to Praful for introducing this change. I think this will be pretty useful. So that's on the usability improvements. Speaking of contribution, I also wanted to highlight one of the contribution that recently came through on the Radius resource types and recipes repo. So in the previous community calls, we've talked about this repo. So this is the repo where we are housing all the resource type definitions and the recipes. One of the community contributors, Andrew, he contributed MySQL type with a Kubernetes recipe. So someone who is interested to get started with the whole contribution experience, this will be a good example for you to check out. The team is also extensively working on making the core types extensible. So one of the things that's currently under development is the core resource type extensibility. So this is something that we've covered in the previous call, where the main goal here is to make core resource types extensible and implemented using Radius resource type, so that Radius can be extended to other platforms. So instead of having imperative Go code that provisions all the containers and secrets and volumes, we are going to have Terraform and Bicep recipes for each of these core resource types in the resource type contrib repo. So what's available today in the resource type contrib is we have the resource type schema definition available for container, routes, volumes, and secret. The Kubernetes recipes for volumes and secrets are also available. To check them out. What's in works is the Kubernetes recipes for containers and routes. And we are also thinking about having more recipes cater to the platform. Um, and the testing of these resource types and recipes is also something that's in progress. Like, how do we ensure that somebody who wants to load these resource types and recipes in their environment, like test the resource types and recipes and publish them out and test it with their application, the whole experience using make commands, that's also something that's in progress. Um, anybody else wants to add on the core resource type extensibility before we move into recipe packs?
No, I would just say, uh, if anybody is looking, I know in the past we had like good first issues. If anybody is watching and is interested in getting involved in Radius, I think the resource type and the recipes is by far the best way to contribute and get involved. We're looking for contributors to work with us, particularly around recipes. We have a growing set of recipes in that contrib repo, but we do need to grow it out. We need Bicep and Terraform recipes for Kubernetes, for AWS, for Azure, for all these core types. I think we have a pretty good handle on the core types like containers, but we've had a couple of community contributions around databases. Andrew is here around MySQL. There was a Postgres one, or no, I don't know.
Uh, there was a MongoDB one, and
Mongo.
then there
That's what I
was
was trying to
a
think of.
Neo4j
And
one.
then and then Nick provided one around Neo4j. But yeah, these are the initial ones. We do need to mature these. All of the initial resource types, particularly the databases, they just have just a single recipe to deploy to Kubernetes. We need to build out recipes that deploy to Azure database, to RDS, DynamoDB, all that kind of stuff. I'd love to have recipe resource types and recipes for blob storage, S3 and Azure storage, blob storage accounts. So I think that kind of the sky's the limit here in terms of like imagining what kind of resource type you would want. I had a bunch mocked up in my dashboard demo. I don't know if you saw it. Like even a virtual machine, I think we imagine, hey, why can't we have a VM as part of Radius? So all those kind of very common cloud resource types. We're really looking for folks to collaborate with us to build those out and mature them. It's a lot easier to do that than contribute PRs and Go, around the Radius control plane. So it's a lot easier to provide a YAML file and a Terraform.
Yeah, definitely. I think some of your existing Terraform and Bicep investments could be converted and reused here instead of like converting them into Go code, as Zach said. That's a difficult route. Um, so let's continue here. I think let's move on to the next topic, recipe packs. I'm going to hand it over to Nitya to talk about the recipe packs and show a small demo there. Nitya, over to you.
Hi everyone, can you see my screen?
Yeah.
And hear me? Okay. Um, So if we remember last community call, Will Tai introduced the concept of recipe packs. We are working on recipe packs as a concept that can be used to manage and bundle related recipes together. Today, if we are working on multiple environments, we will have to piece together individual recipes for every environment, and that's kind of redundant work. With recipe packs, we're trying to get that management easier. Recipe packs is also supposed to enhance scalability by sharing recipe configuration across the environments. The other goal that recipe pack is trying to achieve is that it's going to separate out the life cycle of a recipe pack resource from an environment. For instance, you could update or delete an environment, but the recipe pack is still going to be there. So when you create another environment, you can still reference to the recipe pack you created. So the work is still in initial stages, and this is kind of the schema that we are trying to get for recipe packs. The bicep authoring experience is something like this. We have brand new radius.core namespace that is coming up. That's going to host the recipe pack resource. Name, location are all common to all the radius resources. The key part of recipe packs is that it has an array of recipes. So each of this entry you can see has the fully qualified resource type. So there's a radius compute container type, and that points to the object that has the details of the recipe. So the container here is a bicep recipe. It's hosted on GHCR in this location. We're also introducing an optional digest, which would be used to validate the integrity of the content. Once this resource is created, we would create it by using a rad deploy command. We would be able to key that in to any of the environment. So the brand new environment, which again goes into radius core namespace, is going to allow recipe pack property, which is going to take in an array of recipe pack IDs. So some of the, I think it would become clear as I give a demo of it. It's a POC, work is still in progress. So let me bring up the demo steps. Is that okay for visibility? Like, is the font big enough?
Yeah, it's fine.
Okay. Okay. So let's consider a application which has a definition something like this. It's a simple application. You have an application which has an application type. It just has a container. It has a database that the container connects to. Both the container as well as the database are radius resource types. So let me show the definition here. So it looks something like this. In the recipe world, we would configure, we would first author and upload the recipes, which is what we would do today too. And then the next step, new step, would be to create a recipe pack which bundles the recipes of interest. So the way we do that is by using the bicep that I just showed. Since the CLI is not yet ready, I'm just using a curl command to do it. So we can see that in my recipe pack, I'm just having a container and a Postgres type, and each of those have their respective recipes. The next step would be what I showed in the bicep file, where the environment resource has an array of recipe pack IDs. Again, the CLI is not yet ready, so I'm using a curl command to achieve the same effect. Those are pretty much the key steps that are necessary to deploy the application. So now we can do a rad deploy app.bicep and let it run. While it's running, let me walk through some of the key decision points that we have. If we see here, we have an array of recipe pack IDs here, but we choose to not allow environments to reference multiple recipe packs with recipes for same resource type. For instance, you cannot have a compute recipe pack and another recipe pack, both of which have a recipe for container resource type. We did that for the first iteration for simplicity and so that there is no confusions with conflicting recipes. If you have any thoughts or any use cases that might not work well with this, or if you have any other ideas on how the precedent should work, please let us know. It's still in initial stages and we're looking for feedback. The next key decision point we've made is that environments will be able to use recipe packs from different resource groups, meaning if we go back to this slide, we can see we have dev resource group that's going to host a dev environment, and there is a test resource group that's going to host a test environment. It might make sense for both these environments to have a compute recipe pack, which just has a bunch of recipes related to all the compute resources. So we can have this recipe pack created in a resource group, and that need not be in the same scope as either of these environment. So that is the second decision. Environments can use recipe pack from different resource groups. Third decision we made is that we're not supporting named recipes anymore because we just did not see a valid use case. But again, any feedback there is appreciated. Fourth point is that we are introducing a digest concept so that we can verify the integrity of the recipe content. It is optional. And we are also thinking about versioning. This is again an area where any feedback would be appreciated. It can be done in different ways. We could have it at a recipe level or recipe pack level, and there can be many thoughts into that. So if anyone has any requirements or any thoughts, please do let us know. That's it. Let's look at the deployment now, and it is complete.
So Nithya, can you show us? Can I ask a couple like clarification questions? This was good demo. Thank you. I just want to make sure I get it. So maybe could you show the environment, like the -o JSON?
We cannot show it as JSON now because that needs CLI support, but I can get you the resource using curl. Give me a minute.
Well, I just wanted, maybe you can just show us the environment again that you created.
Yes, let me get that. And I have.
I think it's just this right here, right?
Yes, I just wanted to get the.
Oh, I see. Okay. Okay. Oh, yeah, that works too. Yeah, great. Okay, so that one of the curl commands you did was a post, and you created an environment called default. And then, so this is a new environment in that it has recipe packs instead of the recipes. So in the past, you used to have this long list of recipes with the resource type, and so now the environment is nice and short. Really, it's like an environment is really just going to be the Kubernetes namespace and the recipe pack. So it's really just this like intersection object with references to like where to deploy it and then what set of recipes to use, what recipe pack.
Yes.
And that's an array. And I know you talked about how they needed to be unique, but basically you would be able to put as many recipe packs as you wanted in an environment as long as the contents of that recipe pack was unique. Is that what you're saying? Like you can't have container in one and container in another. We don't know which one to use. You just got to make sure it's unique. Gotcha. Okay. Yeah, great. So I think that's the big change there is just that line. Maybe you can just highlight it for the viewers, just that recipe pack line. And then the way that you define the recipe pack, maybe this is also maybe new for viewers, because we don't often do this, where we have a resource rather than a resource for a container. The recipe pack is a resource kind of like an environment, so you can add a recipe pack into a bicep file. So you would have a bicep file with an environment, and then you'd have a bicep file with a recipe pack. I think that was in your slide 10, right? Yeah.
Yes.
Gotcha. Yeah. So this is like, so you could think like now basically what we're saying is, hey, for these more complex cases, rather than just doing rad environment create, you would actually have a bicep file for it and create it declaratively rather than imperatively, right? So rather than imperatively saying rad environment create, let's do it declaratively saying, hey, rad deploy this bicep file that has an environment and a recipe pack. Hopefully that makes sense. So there's a little bit new concepts that we're introducing. And you'll see this more of as we mature the data model for Radius. You'll see more of these radius.core resource types, which is not really a resource, but it's our notion of an object. Okay, thanks. That was a great demo.
Thank you.
It's gonna look awesome when we get the CLI and in the bicep stuff working.
Yeah, that's true. Just one other point is that the metadata here, it also supports the parameters. So the way that can help is if there is a PostgreSQL and the recipe is pretty much the same, but the development environment just needs much lower size compared to what a production environment would need, you could just key in the parameter that can indicate the size. So that way it promotes the reusability of recipes, and you can key in a different parameter value and kind of reuse the infrastructure you have.
Cynthia, at some point in the future, would we be able to have a parameter on the environment, like a parameter for a recipe and a recipe pack, but have it not in the recipe pack, have it in the environment? Does that make any sense at all?
I have to think about it.
Okay, I'm just dreaming. All right.
Okay. That's sure.
Thanks, Nitya.
Thanks
for that awesome demo. Yarkin, do you want me to present the slide?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm going to bring back the presentation here. So the next topic is about Terraform and bicep settings. So I'm going to pass it off to Yetkin to talk through what's happening on that area. Yeah, over to you, Yatkin.
Okay, thank you so much, Reshma. Yeah, so hi everyone. I hope everyone is doing great. And as of now, it's the next slide, by the way, Reshma. Yes, that's one. Okay, thank you. Yeah, as of now, Terraform and Bicep settings are baked into the main code of Reduce, and you can set the necessary settings using the environment resource type only. They don't have their own resource types, so uh, configuring in deep details on them is not always very easy. Right now, what we are working on is to turn Terraform and Bicep settings into first-class Radius resources so that extending each one of them would be much easier for users and teams and organizations. So for this purpose, we are building Radius core slash Terraform settings and Bicep settings resource types. As you can see, I've attached the links to the feature spec and the design document so that you can take a look and leave your comments if you would like. To give more details on these two new resource types, Terraform settings will replace the recipe config.terraform on the environment object and will let you bring your own Terraform settings that you use in your team, organization, and some important features of the new Terraform settings resource type will be the reusable Terraform RC backend, both tier 1 and tier 2, logging and private registries. It's going to let you deploy Terraform recipes to your air-gapped environments, hopefully in near future. And for Bicep settings, we are bringing registry authentication as we have right now in Radius, like basic auth, Azure Workload Identity, AWS IRSA. From the environment resource, we will be also adding more features to the Bicep settings in near future. In terms of CLI work, we are going to have two main commands, red Terraform install and red Terraform uninstall. As you can understand from the names, it's going to let you install and uninstall the Terraform of your choice, basically. We are also thinking about making red Terraform install async so that it doesn't block your terminal. And we will provide a separate command to check the status of the installation, which is red Terraform status. And yeah, as mentioned before, you can find the links to the feature spec and the tech design document in the slide, and feel free to leave your comments, please, and let me know if you have any questions. And yeah, I think that's all.
Zach, you're on
Zach,
mute.
you're on mute.
Thank you. Thanks. Hey, I wanted to just emphasize something that you said. So in the future, this is the preview of what's under development, but in the future, if you want to use Terraform with Radius, there'll be an extra command that you'll need to do to install the Terraform binary into the Radius control plane. So Radius does a lot for you kind of auto magically, which is super nice for demos and quick start. It just kind of all works. But as we've matured the platform, probably makes sense to be able to allow our users to control what binaries are actually getting downloaded and installed into their environments. So in the future, not yet, but in the future, if you do a fresh installation of Radius and you want to use Terraform, there'll be a single command that you run, rad terraform install. That will instruct the control plane to go out to hashicorp.com and download the latest and Terraform binary and install it. However, if you don't want the latest, or you don't want to go out, if you don't want Radius to go out and retrieve that binary, you could specify your own Terraform binary. So this is all in the spirit of Radius is trying to be unopinionated about what deployment tools are being used. We support Bicep and Terraform right now. In the fullness of time, we want to support others. I can imagine CloudFormation, Ansible, CRDs, Pulumi, who knows? But as we were trying to be unopinionated, the Terraform settings really mirrors your Terraform RC file. We're having the custom backend. Think about it as like the backend config, being able to bring that as well as specify your own Terraform binary. So just heads up, there's going to be some changes to how the Terraform binary in Radius works in a future release.
Thank you.
Thanks, Yetkin.
Thanks, Etkin and Zach, for providing context around the Terraform and bicep settings feature. So that brings us towards the end. So I just wanted to share a quick reminder that Radius will be participating at KubeCon Atlanta. So there'll be a few of the Radius members there. Jonathan from the Radius team, Nick Beenham from Comcast will be doing a joint talk on how Comcast leverages Radius in their IDP. Nick has been a great contributor since the early days of Radius. He's been a great thought partner as well, influencing a lot of Radius features. So this is going to be a great talk. So if you're around, feel free to check out the talk. Radius members will also be available at a kiosk. We are going to have a separate kiosk this time for Radius, and then we'll be doing some demo sessions and beta sessions at the Microsoft booth as well. So more details coming here. I'll be sharing updates in the Discord channel about our schedule and what we are up to at KubeCon Atlanta. And we would also love to meet you in person. So if you're interested to chat 101, let us know in Discord. We'll schedule some time and meet you in person. So that's on the community events. And then wanted to just bubble up some of the blog posts that went out in the recent times. So if you're interested to know what has been released in .51 and 52, check out these blog posts. And then I also wanted to bubble up the contribution blog post. So one of the things that Zach talked about is we are looking for contribution on the Radius resource types and recipes. So this is a good blog post that talks about how to get started. The MySQL type that a community member contributed, that would be a good example to also reference. And yeah, feel free to raise issues if you figure out that something is like not working out in the contribution experience, or let us know in Discord. We would want your feedback on improving the experience and making it better, right from the contribution to testing as well. So that is on the contribution side of things. I think that brings us to the end. If anybody has any questions, you can raise your hand or let us know in chat. We'd be happy to answer them. And if you are like someone new watching the recording, so these are some of the links to get started with Radius. The first link is a tutorial to try deploying an application in Radius, and the second one is our feature roadmap. So if you want to influence our feature roadmap, contribute to the user scenarios that you want Radius to be supporting, just let us know here by upvoting or creating issues. So these are some quick links as well to follow what Radius is up to. I think if you need an invite to this community call and to a release notes as well, make sure to join the Google group and then follow along our social handles for updates on Radius as well. So yeah, that brings us to the end of the presentation. So I'm going to stop the recording here. And if anybody has any questions, feel free to ask them